going on, guys? My name is Tim Roswick, and today we're going to talk about storytelling. Being a game dev channel, you would think that maybe we'd be talking about storytelling in the context of making video games, maybe even writing, maybe something to do with telling a story through visual arts or audio or whatever. But today we're actually talking about storytelling in marketing, because I feel like that's one of the most important forms of storytelling, because as humans, the way we relate to each other is stories. We tell, when you sit around a group full of people, if you're with your friends or with your coworkers or whatever, the things that you share are stories. We constantly share stories. That's how we communicate as a species, is through stories. And before there was written language, before there was any of that, the way that knowledge was passed down was with stories. Stories are extremely important, and that's actually why stories are so important in video games, because we connect to stories. We understand stories. We can take a story at face value about a different character in a different life, and we can learn something from it. We can take things, morals or lessons from those stories, and apply them to our own situation. And it's one of the reasons why the entertainment industry is so massive, because humans love stories. So stories are also important in interpersonal communication. And I think if you do your marketing right, it comes off as communication. It comes off as human. It doesn't come off as spammy. It's not big red headlines at the top of a page. It's not trainers hate him in big, bold letters in front of, buff dudes trying to grab your attention. I think that the right kind of marketing is storytelling. And by sharing a story with someone, by sharing emotions, by sharing the things behind you or your game that make you different, I think you'll get farther than other people that just try and share the facts about their game. And if you don't have a story behind you or the creation of your game, sharing a story in the game, sharing, the fantasy first, as I like to call it. Whatever is in your game, the context of the situation, like whatever is significant in your game or about your game, people tend to share. So whenever I see a post anywhere that gets a lot of traction in any medium, not just gaming, but in any kind of story, anybody that is trying to spread a message, they do so through stories. And stories are what people like to share, not just as humans, not just as people that know each other, but as, bloggers, as media people, as press, as newspapers, all these different types of people. They all share stories, and that's what they're constantly looking for. They're looking for stories in all of the different things that they're researching. They're constantly trying to find a story that is shareable, a story that people will pass on, because stories are so significant in how we communicate. So if you want to accelerate your marketing, you want to take your marketing to the next level, if you want to get your game out there, the best way to do that is to share a story. Some of the most effective social media posts of all time are simple little stories. And don't get me wrong, when I say simple little stories, I mean not complex. I mean not massive. I mean not big. I don't mean they don't take a lot of time, because sometimes telling a story in 2 lines can be much more difficult than telling a story in 2 paragraphs or 2 pages. It takes a lot of work to refine your story, to really get to the core of what makes you or your game special. But once you do, and you share something significant like that, and you can share it in a piece of content that can capture people's imagination, where they can understand your situation, where they can empathize with you, where they can really understand some of the things that had to come together for you to make that game, or some of the things that had to come together in the game world for your character to exist, I think they relate a whole lot more. And when they relate more, they share more. And so ultimately it makes a better business decision to be real, to be human, and to share real things about you and your game. I think one of the most underutilized forms of marketing is this story-driven marketing. And people always say word of mouth, right? Word of mouth. They talk about people sharing your stuff. Like everybody wants to put something out there and have a bunch of people tell a bunch of other people about it. Everybody wants that. But how do you actually do that? You create stories worth sharing. You create emotional, like, stories that grab people, that they can relate to. You share things from your life that maybe other people are too afraid to share, because if everybody shares something, it's not that interesting, right? If you talk about the hard things, if you talk about things that maybe other people won't touch because it's too personal, if you talk about things where people are just more likely to relate to, personally, and I feel like too, the more specific you get in some of these situations, the better it's received. So, for example, like you could write a general story, like something super crazy, like I quit my job and to try and make a video game, right? And that might work. That might work as a media post. That might work as your story, as from a marketing perspective, as something that could work in a blog or something like that. But more often than not, people want the details. They want to understand why you did that. Was it because you have a huge passion for games? Was it because you hated your job? Was it because you always felt like you wanted to be an entrepreneur? Was it because this game that you've wanted to make your entire life constantly got kicked to the side, and then one day you just decided that it had to exist? Some of the more deeper personal stories, some of the stories with that really come from the heart, that maybe you don't want to share, are the best stories to share sometimes. And it's not always fun. It's not always fun sharing your deep, dark secrets in marketing. And it's definitely, on the internet, there's risks doing that. But I feel like it's a better way to market. Just being open and honest with people, telling them some of your motivations, telling them what your intentions are, telling them the things that made you, create this thing, or made you look at games a different way, or quit your job, or, start game development. When you tie those things in to a product, when you tie the things in directly to the thing that you're creating, and you tell a story, an interesting story, those stories can get spread more easily. If you just say, I have a game and it does this, and you can fly around and you can shoot ships, there are 1,000 games like that. Why would they share yours? Yours might be interesting, yours might be fun, but there's nothing there. It's a thing. But if your friend tells you, hey, I was playing this game that I never heard of, and I was flying and something crazy happened and I almost got shot down, and I was going down, and as I was going down, I ejected and shot my ship into another ship, and it was crazy, and they share that story with you, that might resonate a little more. That might make you pick it up. That might make you look at the game, give it a second chance. And stories like that can be extremely powerful. And I think it's one of the reasons why I love games more than anything else, because games are the only medium on the planet where we say, I did this, not the character did that. If I'm watching a character in a movie, I say that character talked to that other character and then he blew everybody up. But in a game, I say, I did that. I made that happen. I drove that car. I flew that plane. And I think that creates for better stories. And I think games have stories kind of built into them. But taking it to the next level and really sharing the motivations and the intentions behind those things, as a developer, as a human, as a person that maybe struggles with, some of the implementations or the ideas or the mechanics or the design or maybe the emotions behind the game. I think just being human and sharing that stuff can go a long way, and sharing a story behind why you do what you do, I think is a better way to market. I think it's just more honest. It's better. I think it's more effective. I just think it's better all the way around. So those are my thoughts on it. Stories are a huge part of marketing, and you absolutely need to understand, stories in order to spread a message, in order to share things, because that's what we talk about. That's what we share as human beings. So That's all I got. If you found it useful, leave me a like and a comment down below. What's your story? You have a story that you share behind your game? You have a story in your game? How are you communicating what your game is through a story? Leave it down below in the comments. But once again, my name is Tim Roswick, and I'll see you again tomorrow.